The Long Haul Podcast, America's Irish Voice. Interviews with inspiring immigrants, renowned Irish personalities, and discussions on all things Irish America. Presented by Michael Dorgan.
At the door to me away, you Santi, my dear Annie.
On this week's podcast, I speak to Rory O Donnell, who's the Secretary of the Northeastern GAA Board, which covers the Boston Metropolitan area and states throughout the Northeast New England area. We take a look at how the championships are run in the Northeastern Division and compare them to the structure in New York. For instance, Boston have a finals weekend in the middle of August, with the winners of each championship going on to represent the division in the USGAA games the following week in Denver. The USGAA covers all GAA boards in America outside of New York. I also asked Rory if there's a possibility of the New York senior footballers taking on Boston each year before the Exiles go on to play in the Connacht Senior Football Championship, or if the club winners of the Northeastern Division could play the county champions from New York at the end of the season. Rory has run the Thar on Trasnan blog for many years, and it's the go-to source for all Northeastern Championship match reports. There's a link to the blog below. Before we start, I'd like to congratulate the New York junior footballers who won the All-Ireland in Croke Park on Sunday for the first time. The win caps a fruitful few weeks for the Empire State in Ireland, with the New York girls Féile team winning back-to-back Division 1 titles and the New York Under-17s winning the Mary McPartland Cup. New York continues to flourish. Also, the Tipperary club are the county's new senior hurling champions after dethroning Waterford in last Sunday's final. They saw off a late Dacia rally to secure the win. Rory, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, James.
Michael, the father is James.
Michael, that's James in the brain. Yeah.
I might mention that straight away. Actually, sure, you brought my father out in a J1 a couple of years ago to referee in Boston when he was about 50. So he had a great summer there.
Yeah.
Is it something you still do, bringing referees out?
Yeah. We usually later in the summer when the championship gets hot and heavy, and teams are, have brought over some of the inter-county players. You want to have, an experienced seasoned ref who can handle games like that, as best you can. So, yeah, James came over, and I think he had a great time here. Yeah, sorry, Michael. And Jay was great. He looked after me too for Man United tickets there.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
yeah, funny, But we do every year. Usually, we'll bring over a hurling and a football ref.
Okay.
The senior matches, and some other games too, But we do try, we're try to develop our own referees, and USGAA has some good referees that sometimes, we might have to fly them in from other cities to have some of the games here. But yourself, when you're in a small, Boston's fairly small compared to New York. I know you say New York, you're kind of enclosed there, but Boston is almost like a smaller version of that. But you kind of want referees that maybe people aren't as familiar with, You won't question them.
Yeah. Just first of all, Rory, will you just give me a background on yourself, where you're from in Ireland and what you do in Boston, how long you've been out there?
Yeah. Well, I grew up mainly in Dublin. When I was a younger child, we lived around in a few places, but moved to Dublin when I was about 11. Then when I left college, came to Boston, through relatives. And, I always wanted to play football out here, as involved with Scully Connell GAA club in Dublin, and got involved with St. Columkille's football club in Boston, and Columkille's folded 2006. And, then Connemara Gaels for a couple of years till I broke my collarbone, and with 3 kids, that was kind of the end of it. That was the end of my playing days. But then, got involved with the Northeast, which is what we call this division here, and which is pretty much covers the New England states, Boston, where most of the teams are. But got involved there as PRO because I had been writing match reports for the Irish Emigrant at the time. And then I started the blog here on Trasnan, and then someone said, well, why don't you, we need a PRO. You were kind of doing that type of thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I've been the PRO for many years, and this year I kind of had a little bit of a change. First time taking the secretary's job. The guy who had done it for 5 years was stepping down, and we needed a secretary. So I said I'd do that, and we've actually got someone else doing the PRO, and believe it or not, the match reports this year. So they're still going up on Har and Trasnan. I'm just not writing them anymore.
Okay.
Then I did spend a couple of years as the USGAA PRO. The USGAA would be the actual county board, and that covers everywhere except New York, basically. Whatever New York doesn't cover, the USGAA covers. And from an admin point of view, their country split into divisions. So there are 10 divisions,
Okay.
If you go back long enough or far enough where really most of the GAA took place in, they call them the four big divisions still, like Boston, which now is called the Northeast, Chicago, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. They would have been the cities with the Irish population and the clubs. And that was kind of really it was called the North American Board at one time. That was really where most of the games were, even though you did have, clubs in other parts of the country. But, now what's happening is you've got clubs springing up everywhere. You got San Diego and Seattle. Well, Seattle's always had a club, but they're growing, Milwaukee, Wisconsin has a big hurling club, St. Louis, Missouri. All around the USGAA, you've got all these Americans really who are mainly interested in hurling, believe it or not. It's more hurling than football. Yeah, because I think it's a different sport. And even the same here in the Northeast. There's a hurling club in Providence, Rhode Island, Worcester, Massachusetts, which is about a half an hour west of Boston. Hartford have always had a club, but they have a hurling club. Portland, Maine, and then there's one in Concord, New Hampshire. And there, they be Junior B and Junior C, but there's, they're run by. They might have a few Irish guys in there, but it's Americans, and they're mad into it. Like, so great to see that,
And so with Boston, so it's not Boston GA, it's the Northeast board, is it, that runs everything, and there'd be, as you said, like clubs from Boston and within the surrounding areas who compete in the championship then every year. Is that basically the way it operates?
Exactly. Yeah. Now most of the clubs are still in, Boston and the kind of Boston area. But yeah, so the Northeast GAA Divisional Board is what we're called. We organize the championships and the competitions, and football, we've got senior to junior C. Hurling, there's senior to junior C. No intermediate, but they're senior to junior C. And then, all right. Yeah, ladies football's kind of a little bit on the wane for a while. There was a time there was 5 clubs, and it was down to 2. But now there's been a couple of new clubs started up at junior, and then a camogie club. There were 2 camogie clubs, and they used to be in like the camogie organized their competitions with couple of clubs in New York, but they went for a while. There was no camogie club, and then 2 years ago a new one started, the New England Fenians they're called. So there's camogie again, and again, they still, they're playing clubs in New York, and the New York clubs also actually in camogie play in the USGAA finals.
Liberty Gales and Annie Moores, I believe, are the 2 clubs here.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you'll see them at the USGAA finals, but the other New York clubs obviously don't. It's all run on different calendar and all that.
And so with the Northeast Championships, Rory, it's a kind of it's a condensed season. Is it? How long does it run for? And is it games every weekend, and are the games on weekends?
Yeah, it is a short season. We usually begin in June. First weekend in June. Now, there's a kind of a pre-season in May to be kind of cup competitions, really, to get teams going and get players out playing,
Yeah.
But the actual championships usually start first weekend in June, and they go until the second weekend in August. And then the third weekend in August, you got the USGAA finals. So usually, Saturdays and Sundays we play the games at the Irish Cultural Centre, which is in Canton, Massachusetts. Canton is probably 20 miles south of Boston. And yeah, usually on a Sunday you'll have 5 or 6 games out there. Saturday, maybe 3 or 4, and then a few midweek games.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there are also sometimes you'll have games around the other states as well, because the clubs in Hartford and Portland, Maine don't be traveling to Canton all the time. So, they usually, the schedule is usually organized so that they'll get a couple of games at their own place. They get their own field and set up their posts, and the team will travel to play them, and we can send a referee and all that type of thing. So, then sometimes they will travel to Canton. I was just going to say it's kind of like, a lot of sort of intense activity for a short period.
Yeah. Get it all in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do the winners of the Northeast win a final, and then like the following week or the week after they go into the USGAA finals? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So whoever wins their competition, say senior football. Right now there are 4 teams in the Senior Football Championship. So whoever turns out winners will go to, this year it's in Denver.
Okay.
And represent the Northeast Division in the Senior Football Championship. Now, I said there were 10 divisions, but you don't have 10 senior football teams.
Okay.
It's really the senior football and hurling still come from the the bigger cities in the USGAA. Most of the other, you'd be surprised how good some of the teams are from, like, Austin, Texas, and places like that.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Like, some of these places have attracted, like, through whatever it is. Madison, Wisconsin. You've got the Kerry Group and Glanbia have setups there. So you've got clubs there with a lot of Irish guys and some very good teams. But they wouldn't usually be in senior. But yeah, so we'll usually send 1, 2, 3. We send in 6 football teams, 4 hurling teams, 2 ladies and 1 camogies. We'd be sending 13 teams from this division to the USGAA final. Like, we'd be the biggest division in the USGAA. But like I said, a lot of the other divisions, there's new clubs starting up, and Denver. Last time Denver had it was 2004. And, Denver has a club, the Denver Gales. I'm not sure if there's another club out there, but I went out there in 2004. And, it was some of the smaller divisions, when they host the finals, you get, like, the fields are immaculate.
Right.
5 full-size playing fields, perfect playing surfaces. The scenery around it was just gorgeous,
Yeah.
And
you must get hundreds of people there, no doubt, between players and supporters. There must be some great, and it's played in one weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's played in one weekend. So they usually start the games Friday. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you basically have 5 fields going for 7 games each for at least the first 2 days, and then the last day will be finals. So maybe half as many, but you have 100 and something teams coming from all over the place.
Wow.
So, you think 100 teams bringing this couple of thousand people,
Wow. What weekend is it on this year?
It's the 3rd weekend in August.
Okay.
Yeah, it used to be Labor Day weekend. That was kind of the traditional North American finals weekend, but they moved it forward about 3 years ago. I think somebody made a motion at a convention, because I'm not sure why. I think maybe to do with having your Labor Day weekend to yourself.
Yeah.
And having to go to the finals, But yeah, that's a huge weekend, and you're playing teams from all over the country. So it's a great chance too, like, to meet people that you wouldn't have seen since the last ones. Like, there's an awful lot of great GAA people out there around the country,
So you'd have your own weekend in the Northeast Championship, and then another separate weekend for the USGA, is it?
Yeah. Like, our finals is usually we'll have it the weekend before. It doesn't seem like it's a quick turnaround to Denver, but usually things are lined up where we just
right. Okay.
names on the flights and the hotels.
All right. Okay.
you just decide who's going, and the Northeast Board does subsidise the clubs that make it.
Mm,
But the clubs do still need to come up with some of the funding for that
mm.
themselves, or the players might chip in. So yeah, it's a big weekend here for our finals, and yeah, the following weekend then everybody goes. Usually, what happens is the teams that win it here probably spend Monday to Thursday celebrating, and then they get on the plane Thursday or Friday, and a lot of them are in no shape playing in a tournament, but you know,
Dust yourself
uh,
down, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
unless there's some clubs will sort of take it maybe a bit more seriously when they go
yeah,
to the USGA finals, because they do want to win it.
yeah.
But our championship here is so kind of I don't know, like I said, intense that by the time a team wins the Boston Championship, you're kind of
Yeah, yeah.
you've won the one you've been playing for all summer. And if you win the USGAA, I mean that is the county championship. That's
Mm,
like you know
yeah.
theoretically the big one, but I think quite often some of the people will be nursing a hangover by the time they get.
And would, in terms of like say senior football, would the winners of the Northeast Championship do they generally go on to win the USGA? Are they generally the strongest? Or
No, no, you'd be yeah. I mean, a lot of people think Boston. It's the biggest
yeah,
division. It's the Irish city, and you'd have like really strong teams. But no, Chicago was on the wane for a while, but they've come back fairly strong. Philadelphia will come up with a strong team as well now and then,
right.
and San Francisco. So I would, and then the other thing is, just the way it works is you might have a lot of clubs that'll, have all their sanctioned players over, right?
Mm,
July the 1st is the deadline for your sanctioned players, and you're allowed five. It's 13 aside, actually. That's another thing people might be interested to know is the rules under the USGA rules are 13 aside, not
mm,
15 aside, for all sports. And the way it works is you have to have two what they call homegrown players on the pitch.
yeah.
Basically, players who are American born and haven't played, I think, past under 16 level in Ireland or something like. I'm not sure exactly what the rule is, but basically the idea is that they've been developed here in Boston or
Mm,
in North America. Or, maybe some of them might have taken the game up in their 20s, but that they're American born
yeah.
players. You're allowed then five sanctioned players, which are like your summer players.
Yeah.
And that's really where a lot of the, clubs for their senior teams will save places for, the calendar at home now
Mm,
has changed. The July the 1st is the deadline, and you'll have a lot of counties out by then. So what we saw last year with the new format, at home, was that an awful lot of county players came out to all, Boston, Chicago, everywhere.
mm,
Um, so yeah, it's kind of like, on the one hand, people argue against that. They'd say, well, it's not developing the game. But on the other hand, you can say, well, if the homegrown players are playing with guys of that level, it's going to develop their game too. If they're training with
yeah.
them,
Yeah.
playing with them, and then the rest of your players, which basically would be the other six, have to be what they call resident players. So they can be homegrown, but they have to at least be living here and have
Okay.
transferred clubs.
Yeah.
So that's a March. That's a deadline for the end of March. So your homegrown players have to be registered and transferred if they're coming from Ireland. If someone comes over from Ireland to live here, they have to transfer to your club by the end of March. So that's for senior football. Senior hurling is a little different. I think they might be allowed, just from a numbers point of view, a few more
Mm,
sanctions. But they still have to have, I think, two homegrown players on the senior hurling pitch as well. And at all levels, it's at least two. So until you get to junior C, where it has to be 10. So your junior C team has to have at least 10
okay.
American born players. Junior D, I think it's all of them have to be, if yeah, North America, there's a junior D competition. We don't have a junior D team in this division. So, it's but then what happens is for senior at least, we'll have our finals, second weekend in August, and then a lot of the sanction guys might be going back home to play with their clubs or back to, who knows. So quite often, if a team club really is going for it, they'll do their best to keep all their players for the USGAA finals.
Yeah.
But quite often, what you'll see is a lot of the sanction guys might be gone. By the time you get to the USGA finals. So yeah, the team that travels mightn't be as strong as the team that played in the week before, basically. That's not an excuse if anyone else is listening. It's just what happens, But it's nice to see a Boston team. We always, when we go and we're traveling from Boston, you want to see the Boston teams do well.
Exactly.
You still do, So yeah, it's and it's just like I said, great opportunity to play teams from other parts of the country and meet GAA people from other parts of the country. So, yeah, and our finals weekend is usually a pretty big weekend. Usually in the football final is usually pretty good. Hurling's been kind of hurting a little bit. We had 4 senior hurling teams up until about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's kind of been the same everywhere. Now we're down to 2, Galway and Father Tom Burke's, and both of those clubs, kind of Galway, obviously have a big Galway connection, but so do Father Tom's. And so because of that, you kind of have fairly strong rivalry between the two of them. And now that they're the only 2 senior clubs, do you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to okay, here we go. Like we had Tipperary and Cork and Wexford, actually. I think at one point we're all senior hurling. And for Junior A, it's Galway and Tom's put their junior teams out, and Offaly are the Junior A club as well.
And in terms of football, then you'd have, I suppose, Kerry Boston and Kerry Donegal would be some of the big names there, wouldn't it?
The big clubs here, the 4 senior clubs, Donegal are, pretty much have risen over the years to become one of the biggest, probably the biggest club in town, And then you got the Connemara Gaels, they're very big membership. Usually they put out, Donegal and the Gaels will put out 3 teams. Donegal have the senior football, Junior A and Junior B. And the Gaels are senior football, intermediate, and they have a Junior B team. And then Aidan McInnesby's would be another senior club. They would have 2 teams, Junior A and Senior. And then Galway are the other senior club, maybe not quite as drawing and quite as large a kind of support base as the other 3. But Galway have, had a senior team for years and a Junior B football team. So they'd be your kind of 4 senior teams. And then Kerry, like the likes of Kerry, now that's a club that was on the brink of, I'd say, folding 6 or 7 years ago. But they had a bunch of people there got together, kept it going, and now they've built it back up where they're one of the better intermediate teams, and they also have a Junior B team. So now they've gotten 2 teams out. Cork will be another, similar to Kerry. Cork used to be a very strong club here back in the 90s and maybe 2000s. And, again, it's just people go home, yourself, people go home, people get older.
Yeah.
Sort of players, you lose players and you're not replacing them. But yeah, Cork were very strong club. They kind of went on the wane, but now they're on the way back. They also are actually this year went up to intermediate from Junior A. And they look like they have a good shot at winning that intermediate championship, and they also have a Junior B football team. And then another club there is the Shannon Blues. They were a club with a very strong senior team. Kind of went on the wane a bit, but now they're putting 2 teams out. They're intermediate. First team's intermediate and Junior B. And Christopher's would be another intermediate team. That's their only team.
Oh
Intermediate.
yeah, a lot of lads from my club in Nemo would have played with Christopher's down through the years. I remember them going over all right.
Yeah, Christopher's were kind of like. I remember a fella from Cork. He was involved with the Cork club at the time, and he said to me, "Jesus Christ," he said, "if there was no Christophers, we'd be fucking great." He said. Because Christophers did kind of compete with Cork for a lot
Yeah.
of the players coming over from Cork, and they still do. They've Christophers have had some great players. They one of their players there now. He's long retired, but he had a good run with Cork. A fella called Mark O'Sullivan. I don't know if you ever heard of him or remember. He played in All Ireland final in '99.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember their half forward line one year. I think we're all three, might have been three Nemo Rangers players.
I think there was Stephen Toomey was out there.
Yeah,
Billy's was Nation out there. David Carney. I can't remember. Now it was a good couple of years ago, but then.
Christopher's have had some smashing footballers. They had a couple of Tipperary guys there a few years ago. They actually won the senior football championship with 7 American-born players. That was, I think, back in 2009. Yeah, and like a lot of the guys that are keeping the club running there are, they're first generation American guys. And yeah, so they're doing a great job keeping that club going. One last club I'll mention is the Wolf Tones. They're intermediate. Again, that's their only team is intermediate. And they're another club that, they've had very strong teams, and for all the reasons we talked about, things have been on the wane, but they're still putting an intermediate team out.
Of course, you had ebbs and flows here in New York as well. You'd have teams would fold. One couple of years they'd be at the top, and then they'd fold away and they'd drop down or just drop out or just fold completely. You mentioned Cork there. I'm from Cork, but Cork were kind of in the doldrums for years, and they won the intermediate last year, and the year before they won the junior, so they're actually up senior this year.
Oh yeah.
And Kerry went backwards for a while, and they seem to be. I play with Kerry as well here, and even though I'm a Cork fan, and they've got themselves together this year, so they're pushing hard to win the intermediate championship this year. But when I said to you earlier about them, I always had the feeling that the Northeast winners would go on to win it, because I always hear of marquee players turning up for the summer for Boston and big money like floating around Sky Sports News transfer deadline kind of thing, and maybe they just take the money and go on the drink for the summer. I don't know.
No. Well, you always hear rumors about.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I mean, there's been. Was the year Dermot Connolly came out.
Yeah.
And he was a big hit, to be honest with you. I have to say, he came out and played with Donegal. And he came out the first year with Shane Carthy, who played in New York. He's on the New York team, but Shane, I guess he got a job in Boston and is living here, so he's with Donegal. But yeah, that was, it was great to have Dermot Connolly here. And whenever people would go out to Canton, I mean, he'd take pictures with the kids and everything. There was no...
Brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, he was, to be honest with you, he was great. And then in the final that year, Donegal played the Wolf Tones, and the Wolf Tones had a very, very good team. Like, there's a lot of guys on the Meath team, or panel now at least, who were on that Wolf Tones team. And I thought the Wolf Tones would actually win the game, because I thought they had a more balanced team, and they had some really, really good footballers like Ronan Jones and Thomas O'Reilly. They're both on the Meath team now, and some very good other home-based guys. Well, I think Ronan Jones was here for a couple of years. He was home-based at the time, but Connolly just he would just turn it up a level or two. Unstoppable, really.
Yeah.
He kind of kept Donegal ahead by a point or two throughout the whole game. He just, whichever way he turned, the ball would just
just a different class.
Yeah, but yeah, like I'd say last year too, a lot of the clubs brought over, a lot of fellas from counties who've been knocked out.
Yeah.
Maybe not as like Chicago. I know they had a feed going where they were live streaming the games in Chicago, and they had like 5 players there too,
Just to give you the latest on the Northeastern GAA scene, Connemara Gaels are leading the Senior Championship division on 7 points and remain the only team undefeated. In intermediate football, Cork lead the way on 8 points with 4 wins from 4 games. In the hurling head-to-head, Galway lead Father Tom Burke's by 2 games to 1, and in the Ladies Intermediate Championship, Boston Shamrocks are 3 from 3 against Connacht Ladies. Some notable footballers in town include Galway fullback Sean Kelly, who was lining out with the Connemara Gaels, and Galway cornerback Jack Glynn, who was playing with Galway Boston. Donegal's Jason McGee and Niall O'Donnell are talking with Donegal Boston, while Ronan Lanigan of Clare is playing with Connemara Gaels. In terms of hurling, there's been an influx of Cork hurlers, with Kieran Joyce leading a sextet operating with Galway Boston, along with Niall O'Leary, Ger Millerick, Shane Barrett, Padraig Power and Sean Toomey. They are fighting it out with Father Toms, who are counting on the Roach twins Brian and Owen, as well as Dara Leary, Sam Quirk and Kevin Moynihan. And how many pitches do you have there at the Irish Centre, is it?
Irish Cultural Centre.
Cultural Centre.
Yeah, the Irish Cultural Centre has, well, there's the main field, which is, the main GAA pitch. And that's that's a full-size GAA pitch, it's actually for 13 aside.
Just going to say it, yeah, it's fairly big. So we played 13 aside in Gaelic Park for the league before championship starts, and it's massive.
Yeah, it's the junior players don't want to play they don't put me on that pitch unless it's hurling,
Yeah. And do you bring it in at all for championship, or does it? Yeah, no.
13 aside on a 160 by 80 pitch.
Yeah.
No, and then there is a second field, which we call them Field A and Field B. We don't actually have a name for them. It's not Gaelic Park. It's just called the Cultural Centre. Field B is a smaller pitch, but it's ideal for the junior B or C or ladies junior. Maybe you'd get away with junior C hurling on it, but anything junior B or higher for hurling, you have to play it on that A field. And senior, intermediate, junior A football, you got to play it on that A field.
Yeah.
B field, it's a good sized pitch. I don't know the dimensions, but be a little tight for the fitter players.
Okay. So the centre. So what I'm fascinated about is, so one of the big issues here with New York GA is that we don't have complete control over Gaelic Park. It's kind of rented from the city. The rent is shared with the Manhattan College, and that's why you'd see all the lines on the pitch for the lacrosse. So I presume that the cultural centre, it's belonged to the Irish community, and it's your own, basically, is it?
Basically, the way it works is the Irish Cultural Centre is a separate organisation from the GAA. So, but we all, we have a common interest in that GAA is the biggest Irish cultural sporting organisation in this country, let alone each city. So the way it works is we, the GAA, the Northeast GAA, has a long-term lease with the Irish Cultural Centre. So, there's an agreement that is written down and signed by everybody and enforceable as regards the GAA's rights to the use of the fields, who's responsible for the upkeep of the fields and the dressing rooms, and, whatever GAA charges on the gate and the culturals, whoever, the whole thing is hashed out, and it's a fairly lengthy agreement, but it's a 30-year lease. So the Cultural Centre actually opened in 1999.
All right, okay.
Yeah, pre-1999, and I was here. I came over here in 1992, and the first season I played here was in 1993. So for the first 6 years, we used to play on what was an MDC, which is, I think, the Metropolitan District Commission. It was like an American football field, or like a high school type stadium with a track around it. It was called Dilboy Field. And the GAA, like the Boston GAA, which I think we might have been called that at the time, basically had rented that since World War II. And it was you could tell some stories from that place. Like, it was a small pitch. It was probably you'd squeeze maybe 130 yards out of it lengthwise.
Mm.
No, I still can't. We used to play hurling there. I still can't figure out how do we play like senior hurling on that pitch. And maybe 60 yards wide, So it was very tight, and the games were really physical. And then the Irish Cultural Centre was a separate organisation that had, I know how long they had been formed, but they bought that property in Canton, and part of, they obviously wanted to attract the GAA.
Mm.
GAA is kind of like, the party agreement was this full-size, proper Gaelic football and hurling pitch would be put there, and we have exclusive rights to that field. The other field I talked about, the B field, is kind of more of a give and take. Like I said, we do have games there usually every Saturday and Sunday, maybe 1-2 games maybe one game on a Saturday and 2 or 3 on a Sunday, but kind of for the season, we, for all intents and purposes, have almost full use of both.
Yeah.
So, it's we are like I suppose a tenant of the cultural centre, but both organisations work in partnership to make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, when we moved from Delboy to the cultural centre, and you actually had dressing rooms with warm water, and you had a proper full size. I mean, it was like, oh my God. No, we've been there for 20 years now, over 20 years.
Okay.
It's amazing how fast the time passes, but that's.
But both organisations are inextricably linked, like, aren't they? So we benefit each other. And it's
like I don't say you couldn't exist without each other, but it's in both sorts of organisations' interests to make it work,
And is the centre kind of an immigration centre like that you'd see in New York, or what's its function on a day-to-day basis?
It's more the promotion of Irish culture. They hold like a lot of Irish cultural events and shows. They host shows for maybe bands or theatre groups coming over from Ireland. Music lessons. Irish dancing takes place there, but it's not really so much an immigration centre. In Boston, there is a organisation called the Irish Pastoral Centre.
Okay.
So they, would do an awful lot of work for not just, there's the Irish, I think this now is called the Irish International Immigration Centre. Those two organisations that again are separate from the Cultural Centre and the GAA, but they would cater more to people coming over and looking for a place to live and jobs and looking to meet people.
Yeah. And do you have a little stand there as well on the pitch for looking from the photos? Is there a stand on one side of the main pitch?
Yeah, the main pitch, I'd say, in terms of capacity, if the place was full, it might have a couple of thousand people there, maybe 2,000, 1,500, 2,000. The main stand, I'd say, would hold guts of, I don't know, maybe 1,200, 1,400, and then that's one side of the pitch, which runs the length of the pitch. The other side of the pitch, there's a couple of bleachers, and then anyone else that wants to watch it stand around the fence, I guess.
And would it be full on the weekend of the finals weekend?
Finals weekend, usually, yeah.
Wow.
You'd get, finals, Boston finals. Yeah, you'd have maybe 1,500 people there for the Boston finals. And a lot of it depends too,
Who's playing?
Yeah, who's playing, who teams have brought out, if there's kind of been stuff going on between two teams, say during the season, and those two teams get to the final, and then that might bring people, you know how it goes. So
But it's something that I'd love to see in New York, because the games are kind of spread out over the season. I'd love to have a weekend where you'd have all the finals in one weekend, and it will be one big event, one kind of party atmosphere, festival atmosphere. You get people coming in from the tri-state area watching the games, but it's kind of like it's spread out. Like last year, I think like the final might have been October, was it last year? The senior final kind of ran on last year. So it's something I'm envious of. I like the structure in place in Boston, and when my father was there, he said the weekend was an incredible experience.
Yeah, Saturday, Sunday now, we'd have finals on both days. And like I said, we've got many competitions going. Football, there's, what did we say? Six. Hurling, there's four. And ladies football, there's two. Now, sometimes what happens though, because of where we are with senior hurling and the ladies, it's intermediate football is the highest level. They wouldn't really be
Mm.
good enough for senior. Um, because there are only two clubs, we do a best of five. So sometimes those two competitions, which is a shame, really, might be done before you get to the finals weekend if one team has won three games, you know.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, you've basically got, usually three or four finals on a Saturday and maybe four or five on the Sunday.
Mm.
And they're going from, noon to 5 o'clock. And yeah, it's great. Like if the club wins and then the players are all celebrating and it kind of just adds to the whole
Yeah.
atmosphere out there.
And do people stay there then? I see a marquee behind the goal. I don't know, is that the
Yeah.
permanent fixture or does everyone stay there or what's the...
That goes up. It's like a patio, and they put the marquee up in the
Yeah.
usually in April maybe, and it stays up till maybe October, till the real cold weather sets.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, usually they'll have bar on the stage with sometimes
Brilliant.
the music on in there, and it'll be those portable bars and yeah, usually like you have a big crowd, everyone hangs around and yeah, it's really a good buzz. It's
Do you think it would ever be feasible where you'd get the winners of the USGAA or the winners of the Northeast would come and play the New York winners?
I've kind of thought about that, and there's a lot of discussion, I suppose, about the New York County team, and wouldn't it be great to have a USGAA kind of county team that could play them? Um,
Yeah.
Now, for at club level, it's harder because of the different rules, and the calendar, obviously. Like the New York finals go on till October, the championship. We're done by the end of August.
Mm, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it would be great because you've got two county boards in the United States, basically. And if you were able to have some kind of a weekend where maybe the hurlers, the footballers, the camogie kind of put teams together and have a weekend of games, maybe at senior and junior level and maybe some
Yeah.
underage games. I
Yeah.
mean, that could only be a good thing, and you'd get a good rivalry going too.
That's what I'm trying to drum up. I have my New York top on for you tonight. I'm trying to get some. I'm trying to get some rivalry going here. Like,
Will I put my Boston top on till I leave it? Yeah, but there's actually been over the years now. I'm not sure how it would go now, but when New York were preparing for the Connacht Championship in football and in the Ulster Championship in hurling, which probably just because of what's happened, it's harder to get a senior hurling team. Boston was pretty strong in hurling and football. It's just Boston on its own. So we played challenge matches against New York, in April to kind of help New York warm up.
mm,
They were very competitive and really good games of football and hurling. Um, so yeah, I think there's definitely
yeah.
and most recently, I think it was a draw. It was maybe the All Stars came to Boston. I don't know how many years, maybe 5, 6 years ago, and the New York football team played the warm up match. The All Star match was New York versus Boston, and it was
Okay.
it was a challenge, but it
Yeah.
was a tough game, and it ended up in a draw. The
Okay.
Boston guys did a bit of training and
Yeah.
preparation for the match. They didn't just show up because it meant nothing. But
Yeah. Yeah, it would
yeah,
be great to get some sort of like pre-season tournament every year because I know the lads they didn't have any friendly game, challenge game before they played Leitrim this year, and it's always a challenge to get games. I know last year they had one game, and if you could do something every year, like it would really, I suppose, it would benefit New York, but it would also give like, I'm sure fellas would like to play on the county team in Boston as well.
oh yeah, yeah. There are players like to be on, and you're playing for Boston, you're playing on the same team as a lot of guys you play against.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's a matter of organizing it and clubs been willing. Sometimes what happened, I think, one year was Boston sent a team down to New York, and a couple of players got injured with fairly serious injuries. And I think it might have been a combination of, our guys kind of really just starting off for the year in terms of fitness and training, whereas the New York fellas had been in the gym and were much fitter. And then, playing on the all-weather pitch, like our fellas are used to playing on grass pitches. And I know there were a couple of bad injuries, and I think clubs then became reluctant to let guys go. And that could be, and you can understand that, especially if you have home-based players, which are highly valued commodities, that you don't want to risk them getting hurt in a challenge match. But, I'd say there's got to be a way of figuring something out because, New York and Boston are so close together. It kind of nearly makes no sense not to take advantage of that.
And would you have any issues fielding at that time of the year in terms of because sanctions are a big thing? Do you have enough homegrown players and enough quality ones that would give the lads? Well, you said they drew with them before, but you'd want it to be somewhat competitive.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I'd have to go through.
Well, let that be your homework for the follow-up interview in a couple of weeks' time ahead of the finals.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's I guess it's something people have talked about for a long time. But having it's just two separate county boards with different rules and stuff. It's not as straightforward as it sounds.
Or even, and then at the other end, played the winners of the club championships face off against each other in late August or September. If we can get our championships done in time.
That'd be interesting, yeah. That'd be an interesting one. Would you play 13 aside or 15 aside?
Yeah, exactly.
And and I mean, like the thing about New York is at the New York at underage level have done an awful lot of groundwork and development gone on. So I'd say there'd be no problem adhering to an agreed upon set of rules for, homegrown players and all that type of thing,
Is the underage structure strong in the Northeast?
It's let's just say it's going. We kind of started off with just one program, which was centered in the Irish Cultural Centre, and that it kind of never really. The name of it's called the Irish Sports Youth League, and it's kind of like it was more like not so much a club as a program, and that was basically the only show in town. But then a club began called St. Brendan's. St. Brendan's are pretty strong in terms of their teams. They have very good teams, like they've won North America or the CYC, which New York underage clubs will play in that too. They've won some CYCs and they've good numbers. And then in my own town, we started a club which is really centered on the town in Milton called Trinity. And we've had success at CYCs and we've pretty good numbers. We've actually got to the point now where the kids that came through at the beginning, when we started off in 2009 with my own two boys who were 5 and 7 years old at the time. Now they're playing on it. We have an adult team that plays in the Junior C competition in football. So, we're going pretty well there. And Hartford have they only started a few years in Hartford, Connecticut, but they've, got the ball rolling with the kids program. And Hartford actually are a club that have a football, hurling, ladies football, and underage.
All right.
So, and they have their own kind of. It's actually a place called Glastonbury, Connecticut, which must be a suburb of Hartford. I'm not sure. the Irish American Home Society. So they kind of have a bar and a little clubhouse, and they have a GAA pitch there. I mean, they have a great little setup. So yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to, if you were to compare the two, like New York is way ahead of us. There's no question about that. But there's an awful lot of work to try and kind of build on what we've got here and keep it going. And there's a big actual tournament coming up that St. Brendan's host the 24th. So that'll be the weekend after next. And there'll be clubs traveling from, I think, Philadelphia and New York to play in that too, as well as the local clubs. So I think in terms of total numbers, it's probably looks pretty good. But, sometimes you kind of get tired of playing against Brendan's and the ISYL and playing each other, that you need to sometimes look farther afield for games. But yeah, it's I basically, in a nutshell, I think could be better. But it is what it is, and everyone's working to kind of keep it going, and keep it growing.
Yeah, the New York underage here is booming. There's some great work done. I think, did Joan give me this figure that there's maybe 2,000 kids? I could be wrong, but there's loads in both hurling and football. Yeah. So the New York future looks bright, and hopefully we'll have that new clubhouse built next year, where hopefully we'll have it in time for that challenge game against Boston next April.
I don't know if
we'll get the ball rolling anyway. Rory, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Great stuff, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And if anyone wants to find out about the Boston reports, Boston GAA reports, Thar and Trasnan is the blog that Rory runs. And best of luck for the rest of the summer, and best of luck for the Northeast games and the USGAA games. We'll be keeping a close eye on it.
Thanks very much, Michael.
All right.
Sure, we might see you down in New York one of these days.
Yeah,
Boston top if we go down.
I'd love to get up for the weekend. I'd love to get up to you for the weekend to see the games up there. I'd love to see it. Yeah,
you'd come up for the finals. I'd say at least you'll have a very good senior football game. That's the way it looks right now. And hopefully, depending on how the hurling goes, you might have a good match too.
Oh, you New York girls, can you dance the polka?
And that's all for this week. Let us know what you think by leaving us a comment on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter at The Long Haul Pod. And don't forget to check our website, thelonghaulpodcast.com, for all our latest episodes and for various Irish American sports news stories.
The liquor was so awful strong, my head went round and round to me away. You Santy, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can you dance the polka to me way? You Santy, my dear Annie. Oh, you New York girls, can you dance the polka?